Tom Paitzler.
Thank you very much for that introduction. Welcome, everybody. Very exciting topic today with tax season coming. As stated earlier, talk about how we can protect your data, information, and identity from cyber criminals. So really on the agenda today, we're going to talk about the threat, what is out there, why do we want to inform you to protect your information, who's actually trying to get it, how exactly should you be protecting your data, and then tax season best practices. Obviously, we're going to be filing our taxes, and it's a good time to make sure that we help you to protect the data as you do that. And then I'll just recap everything we covered to make sure it's clear and you have a very good takeaway, walk away from this with action items of what you can do to protect yourself. As mentioned earlier, I'm Tom Paitzler. I'm the Chief Risk Officer here at DocuSign. What that means is I run enterprise risk, and risk is really looking at threats out there, what's coming, what can harm the business, our customers, our consumers, stakeholders, really looking at both physical and information security. I'm also on the advisory board of Carnegie Mellon University's Chief Information Security Officer Executive Education and Certification Program. And as mentioned, I did start my career as a special agent with the U.S. Secret Service in the Silicon Valley Bay Area, working high-tech crimes, actually arrested a couple Russian organized crime bosses throughout the world, extradited them back to the U.S. So really good, deep background in understanding the threat and the bad guys out there. I was the global head of risk assessments at Visa, the big credit card company. I learned a lot about the payments there. I was a deputy chief information security officer at JPMorgan Chase. And then I was actually the CISO, Chief Information Security Officer here at DocuSign until I became the Chief Risk Officer about a year ago to expand our look at it and look more holistically at risk, not just security. And I do have a CISO who reports to me now, so we still have that function as well. So now what I want to do is go into the threat. So what exactly are we up against and why should you be protecting your data? I'm sure everybody's seen in the headlines lately there's been a lot of breaches for 2015. If you look, it was major breaches throughout large merchants to small merchants to the government. OPM was hit with 5.6 million fingerprints stolen and lots of targets here in the U.S. Really the fraudsters going after large data fields, trying to get as much information as they can to commit fraud. As I said, I started in the Secret Service about 20 years ago, so I've been able to watch the threat really grow and increase. And I will tell you today, it's more pervasive and sophisticated and much more organized. We're seeing that people are specializing. So back in the day, you would think of a hacker, they would go find some kind of vulnerability and then steal the data and then do something with it, maybe sell it. And what we're seeing is becoming much more organized. So there are specific people who just distribute malware, the necessary software to maybe attack your system and compromise it. Then others actually do the compromise, actually exploit the malware. Others take the data and make it usable, like somehow they're going to be able to commit fraud or do something with it. Others just sell it. Others run much like a business. So we're seeing much more sophistication and actually better end result for the criminals. They're able to actually target specific areas that they know that they'll get the best bang for their buck. And with us, we've advanced. We've been monitoring this, and we've put some very good security measures in place. At the same time, the criminals have been doing this for a very long time and found what is the most effective way to get information. We're also seeing that there's a lot of support from both state and non-state actors, and what that means is we have seen instances where nation-states attack each other through cyber means, and every time that happens, obviously there's fraudsters involved in there too, and there's more data stolen. So you might see two countries that are having some kind of conflict, and you'll see that there's some kind of cyber attack against their infrastructure. Well, that also can compromise data, and obviously we're a very connected world, and that means data from different countries can be compromised as other countries attack each other. We're also seeing political and commercially motivated are becoming often linked. So when you think about political motives, I'm talking about the hacktivists. So I think some people have heard of Anonymous, other kind of big hacktivist campaigns out there. The Occupy Wall Street was another big one. And basically what that is different than the fraudsters who go after data to commit theft. the hacktivists often will go after data to embarrass a company or make some kind of political statement. But we are finding that the big hacktivist groups are very large, and often fraudsters are in there. So even though the overall group mission is to maybe embarrass a company, there are some fraudsters in there who can then use that to get into a system. So even though it's supposed to be an embarrassment, a lot of times the data is stolen by some kind of fraudster who's in there, and then they can go commit the fraud. So we're seeing a link coming together. And then again, using it to execute political ambition. So we're seeing, the timing. So exactly with like tax season right now, if you wanted to make a political statement, maybe make it difficult for people to file taxes. Well, if you get fraudsters involved in that, then you would want to take not just an embarrassing moment, but actually capitalize on it for some kind of financial gain. So this is the kind of threat that's out there, and why we're talking to you today, to make sure that you don't become a victim of this group. And we do have a lot of good best practices we're going to go over to make sure you can protect yourself. I do want to give a quick update. So like I said, 20 years ago I started, and really the internet was just kind of becoming pretty common for everybody to go out to. Most people had a computer at work, maybe one at home, often a shared computer at home. If you look at it today, this is a great diagram given us by Allegheny Digital, good people there. And if you look at it now, we are much more connected in this world, right? Our cars are connected, everything's in the cloud, we have workstations, we have laptops, we not only have a mobile phone, but we actually have a phone that's more powerful than the computers we had at home before. We are connected everywhere. Our retailers know more about us than the government probably does. We go into hospitals that are all electric. We go into insurance providers everywhere. And what that means is there's a lot more to protect. So every one of these data points is a potential place to steal your PII, personally identifiable information, for a bad guy fraudster. Also, if I were to steal your data as a bad guy, I have the potential to exploit you in any of these areas. So not only do we have to protect all these areas, but we also have to make sure that no one goes and commits fraud against you in all these areas. So if I'm able to steal some data from you, maybe through your vehicle or something, maybe you go to a rental car company, rent a car, you plug your mobile device in, and you don't realize that it actually stores some information from it. Now I'm a bad guy, get that car, get that data off there, and then I go use it to commit maybe some kind of fraud against you and your insurance provider. Now you look at it going, okay, the mobile phone and the vehicle were used to steal the data, but the fraud was committed at the insurance provider. So just looking at that kind of stuff, it's a much more expansive world compared to when we were first starting this and working on these cases back when I was in the Secret Service. I think, I had one cell phone for the whole family, one computer at home, probably a work computer, and now, I've got 3 kids, so I think we have 300 phones at home, something like that, and 300 computers. It's insane how many devices we have and how many things are connected. So this chart that we're showing you right now really demonstrates how it is getting easier and easier for the hackers. So basically, as we said, they need to have the means, right? Access to social media, public records. As I said, everything's becoming much more digital. So there's a lot more means out there to go do this. Then there's also a lot more opportunity. We are pretty much 24/7 internet access. Everybody wants everything around the clock. We're a global world interconnected now, so people are transacting around the world 24/7, traveling a lot. And there's motive. If you can get this data, you can do financial gains, you can make political statements, all that. So when those intersect, you have the means, the opportunity, the motive. That's where your data is at risk. And if you think about it, this is getting bigger and bigger. These circles, as they get bigger and bigger, means that the data at risk section gets bigger and bigger. If you went back 20 years ago, wouldn't be as much internet access, wouldn't be as much data out there, and there wouldn't be as much motive, because if you steal the data, you're only limited to certain areas you can use it. So all these bubbles, circles are growing, and it's meaning that your data is more and more at risk. So just to back this up with some statistics for you, how is the data stolen? Last year, data breaches at an organization was about 47% of organizations were reporting a serious breach in the last 2 years. So if you think about it, that's about half organizations. So pretty much half the organizations out there have experienced a serious data breach in the last 2 years. Now, sometimes things are underreported, so it might be even higher than that. Sometimes people might not know it; they might have already been breached and not have seen it yet, or they just don't want to disclose it yet because they haven't disclosed it. The other interesting thing is 75% of the attacks were from vulnerabilities in third-party applications. So that means that somehow connecting to it. So even though we're seeing half of them being breached, it might be a larger number because they might have been breached through a third party that others share. So somebody might not even know they were breached. So they might be sharing information with an enterprise, not realize their data was actually in that breach just because it wasn't discovered. So really, when you think about it, anywhere you're sharing information stuff, it's not just yourself that needs to protect it, but the areas that you interact with, you want to make sure are secure. You want to pick, you know, the 50% who aren't getting breached and make sure that that's where you're transacting your data. Because when you go to the entities that aren't taking security serious, you have a very high risk of losing your data. Another area that's alarming I want to call is the phishing and social engineering. For those of you who don't know, phishing is a spoof email you get purporting to be from your bank or, you know, maybe from DocuSign, the company I work at. It's not from the actual company, but it looks like it. And what we're finding is still about 23%, so almost a quarter, almost 1 in 4, of recipients still open those phishing messages. It's not good to open them because when something comes in that's not from the legitimate source, this is a way to get malware in there. Even worse is that they put attachments in there that they urge people to open, and when you open the attachment, it executes malware, again, the malicious software. So just to do the math for everybody, if I was a fraudster and I sent out 1,000 emails, phish emails, roughly I'd get about 230 people to open it and about 110 people to click on attachments. So for every 1,000 I send out, I have the potential of basically infecting 230 computers and pretty much will infect 110 because the 11% that open and actually open an attachment would be much better to execute. So it's definitely worth my time as a fraudster to continue doing phishing. And when you think about with phishing, what I can do is I can put malware on personal computers or work computers and then basically take your passwords, take email addresses, any kind of financial information, anything that you upload can basically get sent to me. And just to let you know how sophisticated malware is getting, it's basically 12 new strains of malware are discovered per minute. So that's a pretty alarming number. So that means that there's new malware just being developed around the clock. Another scary statistic is 127% increase in ransomware. Ransomware is where I actually would send you maybe a phish or something like that. You open it, and then I install malware, and I lock it and encrypt your computer, and then basically send you a message saying, I have all your data, and I'm going to delete it unless you send me money. And that's the ransomware. So basically, I am now putting, I am taking your data from you and then charging you to get your data back. So again, this is pretty alarming, and this is the kind of stuff that we're addressing and making sure that we can arm you against so that you do not fall victim to this. So the impact specifically for tax season, in 2013, $5.3 billion in tax refund fraud was reported by the government. That means 1 million tax filers were impacted, and each one of them had 9+ months to resolve. So basically, you're not getting your tax refund, and it takes a while to get it back, and then obviously the fraudsters have a lot of information on you, so they might be trying to take over your identity, doing other stuff. So not only you're out your tax refund, you're dealing with the headache of trying to prove you are who you are and the fraudsters are not who they say they are, and possibly dealing with other identity theft. So it is a pretty high impact here, and this is why we definitely want to make sure that you're protecting your information. So that moves us on to the next section, which is protecting your data. And this is where I'm going to really review what you can do to really protect yourself every day, and then specifically around tax season. I'll go into some of those details. So the number one thing I want to say is don't give out sensitive information unless you have to. And the number one area that I want to talk about is Social Security number. It's very common for us to give our Social Security number out almost everywhere, and you really don't need to. There is no legal requirement to provide your Social Security number to organizations unless the transaction requires notification to the IRS, Internal Revenue Service, or the financial transaction is subject to federal customer identification program rules. So that's examples like tax filing, you do need to use a Social Security number. Credit card applications, credit reports, real estate purchases, anything that has a financial gain. But when I go to my dentist does not need to know my Social Security number. I do not need to give it to her. If I go to my doctor, they do not need to know my Social Security number. If I go anywhere else that's not doing some kind of financial transaction, I don't want to use that as an identifier to me. because every time I give that out, there is a potential for it to get stolen, and then once the bad guys, the fraudsters have it, they can use it to go and get information such as, filing my taxes, doing credit card applications in my name, credit reports, real estate purchases, all that in my name. So you really want to protect your Social Security number and not give it out unless it's actually legally required. The number two big area that you can help protect yourself is to really make sure that organizations earn your trust. So really want to ask a couple things. Like I said, 50% of organizations are going to get breached or have been breached in the last 2 years, and we assume the trend will continue. So how do you know that who you're transacting with is less likely to get breached? Well, can you submit information securely? What you want to look for is a URL that starts with HTTPS. The S is for secure. If you don't see the S, that means it's not secure. You're not sending encrypted traffic. You can also look for the lock on the page. A lot of the web browsers will have a lock. That means that the data that you're sending in is securely being sent to them. Then you want to make sure your document will be secure. So you want to make sure that they guarantee full document encryption and that they have tamper evidence seals on the document. So basically, when you do finally, so you send it securely, but then it becomes part of a document, is that document then encrypted? Because if I send it to you securely as encrypted, but then you leave unencrypted in the document and someone breaches them, they can just steal that data. It might have sensitive data such as my Social Security number on it. And also, if I do have a document with them, I want to make sure whatever document I send, because it's very sensitive, if someone were to get into it and try to tamper with it, it would be evident. So if I go into contract with somebody, I don't want to say, we agree to pay $100 for something, and then they produce a document that says it was a $1 agreement. We don't want that happening because of the you want to make sure that no one can commit that kind of fraud. So you want to make sure there's a tamper evidence seals, and they need to be very boisterous on this. And I'll show you some examples of where that you can find this stuff in a bit. And then you want to make sure your document is stored securely. So as I said, again, is this in a secure data center, or is this some servers in someone's garage? What you want to do is find out that they're following very strict security certifications and standards. If they have 24/7 on-site security, again, I talked about physical and logical, the information security side. Make sure the physical security side's there too. Like, it's great if they do all this stuff, and then if they just run it out of a garage that gets broken into and the servers are stolen and they're not encrypted, and then your data's gone. That's not good. And this has happened in the past. So everything I'm talking about, it's not like it hasn't happened. So everything I do mention, just making sure we're holding organizations to the highest security standards will really help us as consumers. And then, how do I know the organization takes security seriously? As I mentioned, security certifications, best practices, thought leadership, security updates, performance shared publicly. You want that stuff. And I'm going to go into some examples of that, just showing you what we do here at DocuSign. So, at DocuSign, I talked about how we publicly display everything I'm showing you, and I'll tell you where you can find this after the webinar. But our hardware and infrastructure, it's geo-dispersed. So, like I said, we have secure data centers that run around the clock. And if there's a major earthquake in some section, or there's a hurricane or a storm, we have data centers all throughout the world, so you don't have to worry about the data disappearing. So if there's an earthquake and one of our data centers is completely destroyed, we have near real-time data replication, so your data is never lost. And again, round-the-clock security on those. Then on the applications access, we have formal third-party code reviews, and we demonstrate this through certifications and other methods. But basically, we develop our code, and then we have someone else look at it to make sure we didn't leave bugs in it, any holes in it, and we address anything that might be found, so that way it's secure. We do offer AES 256-bit encryption. That's probably over a lot of people's head, but that's basically the latest and greatest. It means that we're encrypting to the highest standard. And then we actually have a very strong, robust key management program, because there's keys to your encryption. We make sure that no one can steal it. That's like putting a very nice lock on a bank vault and then leaving the keys out in the front, out in either in the lock themselves or out front. We don't do that. We lock it. We put the best bank lock on our data, and then we make sure that the keys are handled very securely, sometimes even in the customer's hands, or at least minimum of 3 people having to come together with different keys to open the data. And you want to make sure that people, the organizations that you work with, follow similar standards. And with the systems and operations, we have separate corporate and production networks. What that means is the employees here at DocuSign, what they use is separate than what the customer's using. So that way, if there's ever an issue, something happens here at DocuSign, you cannot go into the consumer's information. And also, we make sure our employees don't have access to our customer information. Just keeping it separate is the best way to do it. We also have two-factor authenticated VPN access. What that means is we have to do a password and something else to get a virtual private network set up to go into the production environment. It's really good because it makes sure that no one can just steal our credentials and get into the production data. And then we have active 24/7 monitoring and alerting. We call it the Security Operations Center. They work around the clock. They work holidays. And basically, they're looking for any anomalous activity, anything that could potentially look like it's some kind of malware, because like I said, there's 12 new types of malware being created every second. So we want to make sure that, something that we have not seen before, we're alerted to, we respond to, and identify it. And then for the transmission and storage, we do secure private TLS encrypted sessions. Again, that's pretty technical jargon. For those of you who don't know, it just means we're doing the latest and greatest. We are anti-tampering controls in place, and even our documents is a custody log. So basically, if someone were to go into contract and someone says, hey, it was $1, and you say, no, it was $100, we could prove through our audit log that the document they have in their hand is not a valid final document. We don't know what the document looks like because we don't have access to that, but we can prove that the document in their hand is not the valid document. And the one that says $100 would match up to our log, so we could say that is the valid one that was agreed upon. And that's the digital audit trail. So you definitely want to make sure that you're looking for that kind of stuff from your organizations as you proceed. I did talk about security certifications. These are the ones that we advertise here at DocuSign, and these are the kind that you should really be looking for any other organization. We do follow the ISO International Standards Organization 27001-2013 security compliance. It's basically the gold standard of global security. International Standards Organization is accepted around the world, and it defines information security. And it's done by a third party. We put everything in scope, our production environment, our sales offices, our corporate offices, our data centers, everything. So somebody comes in every year and looks at everything we do and makes sure that we're secure. We also follow the SSA 16, SOC 1 and SOC 2. These are another standards for attestation engagements. So basically what it does is it says we are attesting that we are following the best security operation practices. It's part of the service organization control. It's a security framework, testing of controls, effectiveness measured, reliability of services. So it goes really well hand in hand with the ISO because we're basically saying we're following what the International Standards Organization asks us to do, and then we show that all the controls match up. So we're following that for SOC 1 and SOC 2. We also do the PCI, Security Standards Council Data Security Standards. Maybe some of you have heard that. That's really around credit cards. It was, it was Visa, MasterCard, JCP, Amex, Discover, all coming together and making one standard of how you would protect credit card data. And we are level 3 merchant, a level 1 service provider, which means we are held to the strictest of the standard because we're on the level 1 side. So we have to do that every year as well. We are a web service. We are trustee certified, which is data privacy, use of data, collection of data, data requirements. And then we also follow the Sky High Enterprise Ready, which is part of the Cloud Security Alliance because we are a cloud provider. So basically, if you look at all these certifications, you can feel you know that as an organization, if anybody's boasting these, they are definitely tested to show that they're doing the latest and greatest and the best the industry can do in a security effectiveness. So these are the kind of standards you want to look at. And I'll show you where you can see these later because if you want to compare against other organizations, it's a good framework to look at, and so I'll definitely get to that. I did talk about thought leadership. The other thing we are doing here at DocuSign is we have created a new standard. We are a digital transaction management company, so we actually have created a new standard. Just launched. Well, it launched a couple years ago, but the actual standard is being published this month. And basically, it's around protecting and making sure everything's available, connected. And so similar to what I described for the credit card industry when PCI came along, I was at Visa at the time that PCI was created. We're doing the same for digital transaction management. And basically the standard will be self-certification for the first year and then moving into third-party review. And on the protected side, that's where there's going to be a very robust security standard, compliance, privacy, enforceability, making sure that the documents are secure, they're compliant, they take privacy serious, and that when you sign the document stands. From the connected side, you're going to have availability, making sure it's as available as paper, 24/7. If you're a doctor and you're using some kind of digital paperwork, you need to be able to get the record immediately, just like you would paper, especially if a patient is like, in intensive care and crashing or something like that. It needs to be scalable. It needs to be able to grow with things move to different areas. It needs to be universal, as in working in every country, everywhere around the world, and interoperable. Work on your iPad, work on your Android device, work on anything that you have, cell phone, iPad, whatever. So this standard is being launched, again, thought leadership. There's great companies that are part of this. Visa is one of them, Intel, HP, Microsoft, some big names signed up for this, so you'll see more of this. But looking for people who join standards like this and push new initiatives, this is a thought leadership you want to look for, because that shows an organization takes it serious. They're doing what is the current standard, and they're thinking about the next standard, making sure they're ahead of the fraudsters, the bad guys with your data, so you can trust them. As I said, I would tell you where you can find all the stuff. At DocuSign, we have a trust.docusign.com website. You can go out on that website, and it talks about everything that I said. We actually advertise our availability, too, so if you were using DocuSign and started to seem slow, you could go on there, and we may be able to say, hey, there's been an earthquake, we have a power outage, maybe in, California, and it's impacting a data center, so, you would know that the system might be running a little slower or something like that. Any of that updates there. When major attacks come out, too, there's a lot of times we will publish information on it. So Hartley was in the news, a big one. We posted information immediately about how we were protecting against it, and also advising people how they could protect themselves. All of our certifications, everything I talked about are there. So if you look at this site, you can kind of see exactly what we do and see if the other organizations you want to work with are following something similar. And honestly, look and see any organization that you work with. Really a good organization that takes security serious will have some kind of trust or security center that you can go to and find out exactly what they do to protect your data. And this actually shows that the company takes it serious. So I would definitely look for a trust site. All right, so we're going to move on to number 3 of how to protect yourself. I did talk about phishing, and I want to give you an example and actually walk you through one. So this image I have on the right is a fake DocuSign email, and the idea would be that if you got an email coming from maybe something like DocuSign, I'm picking on myself, but it could be a bank or whatever. You want to make sure that you don't fall for it. So before you open it, the one thing I would do is make sure you know who the person is. If you get something from John Q. Hacker, I definitely wouldn't open it. But if it, sometimes it will be from a friend. Often fraudsters actually compromise friends' emails and they get the contact list. So, if I got something from somebody that I trust and I know, I might call that person. So if I suddenly get a DocuSign document email sent to me from a friend of mine, maybe someone like Heather who I work with, and I'm like, wait a minute, I shouldn't be receiving anything from Heather. I might call Heather or, reach out to her before I open the email and just say, hey, Heather, I just received this. Is this legitimate? It's always okay to, just check, especially if it's something serious. Or if it's from, DocuSign or my bank or something like that, and I wasn't expecting it, I might not even open the email or click on the link. What I would recommend is you just go straight to your organization's website. So I'd go to DocuSign.com or I go to mybank.com, whatever bank you use or whoever it's coming from, and log in there, and there would obviously have a message system there or something like that. If there's nothing there, then you're going to know that it's not legitimate, because if it's a legitimate thing, it would be in your system on your organization. You can also always call the organization and just make sure. It's the same thing as when, someone calls and they say always call the number on the back of your card. Don't call the number given to you. So if someone sends you an email and then it says, if you have any questions, call us, don't call them. That number is often fake. You want to validate and find the actual legitimate number of the company, call the company direct. Also, if you get something that is urgent, often companies do not threaten you. Like a bank would not send you and say, you need to click on this right away or we're going to drain your account, we're going to take your money away or anything like that. If there's any kind of urgency to it, often that is a sign it is a fraudster, because organizations don't do that. They don't pressure their customers. They don't do those kind of things. So if you get something that says time-sensitive, urgent, need to sign immediately or you'll lose money or something like that, that should set off some red alerts, and make sure you don't click on that. The other thing is the links to unknown URLs. Like, so if you get something that's saying it's from DocuSign, but the link is actually docusign.x25.com, that's not DocuSign. That is x25.com with a a little name in front of it or something. So basically, that's how fraudsters do it. They put in some kind of name that you'd recognize and then a bunch of other stuff around it, or maybe it's like DocuSign misspelled or your bank misspelled or something like that. So just really look for that stuff. Don't fall for this. Again, try not to open the emails. If you do open the emails, definitely don't open the attachments, and really make sure that you're looking at this stuff. If you're not sure, make sure you call the people. The other item that I want to bring up is only download apps from trusted organizations. If you are an Apple user or something like that, I would not recommend you jailbreak your phone. They have pretty good controls in place in the iTunes store, and the reason, I know it's frustrating sometimes, but the good news about it is everything's reviewed through the iTunes store. When you get to the Android devices, they're not as restricted, but then obviously some more vulnerabilities can come through. So I would really, if you're going to get apps, try to get the apps that have been out for a while, that come from more trusted organizations, bigger names. When you download the small apps, little, new and not as big a company, a lot of times, you run more risk. It could be a fraudster, or it could be a company that's just coming together and doesn't have really the best security in place. And when you think about it, that's a good place where malware could come in, or if you're trusting them with your personal identifiable information, they might actually have their server in the garage, or they might not be encrypting. I will give you an example. When the online banking apps came out, there were lots of apps that were coming out that were not actually made by the banks. So somebody would purport to be a bank, and this was not for fraud. This was just for somebody to create an app and make it. But what they were doing is actually going and logging to the banks. So you were basically going into an app that would collect your username and password and then log you into the website and get you your information. So this third party suddenly had all your information, and a lot of them were just set up, servers in garages and not encrypted, and there was a lot of issues where this data was being stolen. And actually that pushed banks to move very quickly and offer their own apps, their own banking apps, because they wanted to make sure that you could download it. So definitely, if you're going to download some kind of app for your banking or any of your financial stuff, make sure it's coming from the organization. So if I want to, get a DocuSign app, only get it from DocuSign. Don't get it from somebody else who would then log you in, because you're adding a third party with some sensitive data that you don't want to do. That brings us to our fourth way to protect yourself, and that is to make it difficult for hackers. And these are some great ways to do it. So limit what you share publicly, all right? So we're all socially connected. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook, we've got lots of stuff. Make sure that the people you're connected to are your friends or people you trust. Make sure that you kind of lock it down. I wouldn't share too much information to the general public. I would make sure that you do kind of annually just go through your Facebook or Twitter and just make sure that the people who you're connected to are people that you want to be connected to, in case you accidentally added someone on. And then I'd be really careful about what you share out there. Don't advertise if you won the lottery. Don't advertise that you just got a big bonus payout. Don't advertise that you're going on vacation. These are things that if you're a fraudster and you see, it's a great way to know, hey, they just left their house and they're going to be gone. They can break in their home, or, hey, they just bought a brand new car and a new house, and this is what they do. I know that there's somebody that if I were to take over their stuff, I could get some money out of them. So you don't want to be advertising too much of that. Or if you do it, just make sure it's limited to your actual friends. Don't just let it be broadcast to everybody in public. Also, be very careful. Like when you post on Facebook or Twitter and you start naming your dog, or you're connected to your mother, that's information they can collect. Now they're going to know possibly your mother's maiden name. They can find out the name of your pets, things like that. And those are questions later that you might use, and that's one of my points in here, for your obscure questions. We call them out of wallet. But if I'm a fraudster and I've been watching you on Facebook, and I know the name of your mother's maiden name, I know your pets' names and your friends' names, I might be able to guess some of those out-of-wallet questions. So just be aware of that. The more data you put out there, the more fraudsters can use it to take over your identity. Also, we recommend you use strong passwords or a password manager. So basically, don't use password 1, don't use 012345 or any of that. Don't use anything with names and stuff. What I do is I try to actually use a system to generate a password for me that's just completely doesn't mean anything. It has numbers, letters, caps, uncapitalized. Very long is good as well. Sometimes you can do passphrases, or you can use a password manager, which basically generates some pretty specific and complex passwords. Also, I recommend using different passwords for different sites. I use one type of password for my financial websites, one for my social media websites, one for my work, various things. So if there is anyone who steals a password, let's just say they steal one of my social media site passwords, they can't go and get into my bank account then, or they can't get into my email because my email password is different than my social media. So basically making it more difficult on the hackers. We talked about using challenge questions. Make sure that you do them, but make sure they're ones that you just no one could find out. Don't make it your mother's maiden name. Try to do things that you wouldn't talk about, but you would know. So maybe where you met your spouse, the city you met, maybe something like the make or model of your first car you drove in, or something like that. Something that you don't talk about today, but you won't forget, but very difficult for the fraudsters to find. Or honestly, sometimes the answer to the question is completely different. So you might select what's your pet's childhood pet's name, but you use your best friend from high school, and you just know that you do that or something. So basically, the answer is not actually what the question asks. So maybe it says what's your pet's favorite name, and you answer the city that you found your spouse in, because you just know that that's the way you do it. So make it really difficult for the fraudsters to steal that type of data from you. And then honestly, one of the best things you can do is make sure you have multiple ways to authenticate yourself. So if you have an email system or anything that allows for two-factor authentication, something where you do need a password and something, that is one of the best ways you can protect yourself. So basically, if someone does steal your email and password and they know it, and then they go to log in, and then it says, okay, now enter the code that was just texted to your phone, the fraudsters can't get in there. So that's a great way to make sure that no one can get there. And plus, you'll know someone probably just stole it because you'll suddenly get a text message to your phone with a code to get in your email, and you'll realize that somebody has generated that, and then you would know to go change your password. And like I said, for me, I group my passwords, so I would know if someone did that, I would just change my password for all my email systems. I wouldn't have to worry about the other ones because, my emails are separate from my social media. So definitely, I think these are the best ways you can make it really difficult for hackers. And to make it more of an analogy of like what people understand, if you're living in your house and you put a lock on your door, you have a dog in your house, and you have like maybe bars in your windows. If I'm a burglar, I'm going to go to the next house. And if you think about it, the more that you do, the more likely you're going to turn to something else. Because if you are a fraudster, a burglar, or whatever, you want to make it easy. You don't want to work hard for the things. You want to go get the easy stuff. So if I'm a burglar and I'm walking down the street and I see a house with a door open and all the cars gone, or maybe a window open, that's an easy one to break into. If I'm walking down the street and I see cars in front and a large Doberman Pinscher in the window and bars and locks, I'm just going to keep walking because it's not worth my time. I probably won't get anything out of that. So think about that the same way you do when you do your information security. The more difficult you make it for someone to get into your stuff, the better protected it is. Now, what happens if you actually do get your data breached? So you've taken all these steps, and you did an organization. Your information went to an organization that unfortunately got breached. I want you to take immediate action. So basically, you should request a security freeze on your credit reports right away. Again, change your passwords. I can't reiterate that enough. And you should be changing them on regular intervals anyway. At our work, we require password changes every 60 days. What I would do is if you have a place of employment that requires password changes, just change your personal passwords every time your work requires it as well. Just get in the habit of doing that. It's a great way to remember. If not, at least, I would do it more than annual, but at least, if you can do it annually, even at tax time, just think about it that way. Every year when you file taxes, it's a good time to start changing some passwords. So, really think about that. But then, again, check your accounts for anomalous activities. So if you've been, a victim of breach, they say that you've been breached, you want to go out there and just look. Is anybody starting to, drain accounts, or there's some suspicious charges? Review your credit reports, make sure there's no new accounts being opened or addresses being changed, phone numbers being changed. And then take advantage of free credit monitoring. It's available all the time. You can get it now, an annual report. But also, if you are the victim of a breach notification, most entities will offer you anywhere from 1 to 4 years of credit monitoring. Take advantage. Do that. Sign up for it because that can really help you. You want to get in front of this. Again, you want to be the one that if I'm a fraudster and I start to take action and everything's frozen and I can't do anything, I'm just going to move on to the next person. So I definitely would take action on that immediately because that's going to be the best thing you can do. All right, so now what I want to do is go into specifically tax season best practices because obviously we're here at tax season and you're thinking, wow, you just scared me a lot. I know that my data is everywhere and you gave me some good best practices, but what can I do right now? So this tax season, I really encourage you to file early and electronically. There's many reasons you want to do this. One is you get your refund back before identity thieves can try, right? So if you're an identity thief and you've got some data and you want to steal someone's tax return, you got to go file a tax before them. So there's a little bit of a race if your data was compromised. Additionally, the IRS is doing a lot more security and fraud checks that can cause delays. So the earlier you get, the quicker you'll get your refund. You don't want to be one of the 1 million who it takes 9+ months to get your stuff back. So I highly recommend if you've got everything together, don't delay. Try to get your taxes filed right away. And then the other one is to use a trusted professional tax preparation service like Liberty Tax. I mean, I talked about organizations. Can you trust them or not? I mean, obviously, we're partnering with Liberty Tax and all this. We know that they follow the same security standards we do at DocuSign. I would highly recommend when you do it, you don't use something that just does not advertise their security measures. If you want to use somebody, make sure you check their trust sites. You ask how are they going to store your data. Is it encrypted? Is it at rest? All the questions, everything I walked you through, because you just don't want to file this information through someone who doesn't take your security serious. And maybe not this year it's a problem, but next year if there's if they're one of the 50% that are breached, then all of your data can be lost. So make sure that you work with somebody like Liberty Tax that securely prepares, sends, and stores tax refunds electronically. And that reduces errors that may delay refunds. Because again, the IRS is looking for security fraud measures. You want to make sure it's somebody who understands how to get these through. And then, really protect your information, like working with, as I said, Liberty Tax, DocuSign, and Legal Shield. If you can really make sure that you take it serious and do it with trusted organizations, that, you've got an expert, accurate, personalized tax preparation with Liberty Tax. You got secure electronic signatures for your tax filings through DocuSign. And Legal Shield is really worry-less, ongoing identity theft protection, really helping you out. So, in summary, I want to make sure I go over all this so you're all armed. Basically, number one, don't give out sensitive PII unless you have to. So again, best example I have is a Social Security number. Also, date of birth. A lot of times people ask for date of birth. You don't need to give it out to a lot of places. Like if there's a website, they're just trying to give a verification. Honestly, anytime I have a verification, I just do 0101, so January 1st, unless you're born on January 1st, don't do this. And then I just pick usually a date of birth that's like 2 years before mine, so they don't know my date of birth. And the reason I do that is they're just doing it for, age verification. I want to make sure you're old enough to, you're not a minor. So just make sure that happens. But, consistently use the same one so you don't forget what date of birth you're using. But I just do an 0101, and then I pick a date 2 years before I was actually born. So just, making sure your personal identifiable information is not used unless there's a real business case. They need your date of birth because they're going to match it up against some kind of financial record. They need your Social Security number for some financial record. Obviously, medicine would need your date of birth because they're actually trying to figure out who you are and stuff, but they don't need your Social Security number. Just really be careful where you give your information out. It is your information, and you want to protect it. Then do some research on the organization asking for your information. As I said, the ones that you really have to give it to. So you've got to file your taxes. You have to use your date of birth. You have to use your Social Security number. So don't just give that data to anyone. Make sure who you're giving it to is handling your data well and that they do take security seriously. Avoid phishing attempts and malware. Make sure that you know who's sending you emails. Make sure that you're really checking things, especially if they're asking for anything sensitive. If they're sending you links and you're opening, don't open them unless you really know. My example, if Heather sends me an email and I wasn't expecting it and she's asking me to wire her money and tell her my Social Security number, date of birth, I'm going to call her and make sure. And, maybe there's a legitimate reason. Maybe, we are actually doing something, some kind of thing together, and that's fine, but I want to make sure and double check that. Make it difficult for hackers to steal your data. Again, you use best practices, everything I talked about. Really make it, put the bars on your windows, lock your doors, get the big dog, get the alarm. Those kind of things really help you. Take immediate action on breach notifications. If you're told that you've breached, don't just be the victim and sit there. Do what you got to do. Freeze your accounts. Proactively get involved, because again, it's like, if you are a victim and someone's attacking you, if you fight back, often they will run away, or if you scream, or if you yell, or if you do something like that. Same thing here. Make it difficult for them. If they have your data, but every time that they try to use it, there's freeze, there's locks, there's all that stuff. It makes it difficult for them. Be proactive. Don't be the victim. File your taxes early. Again, I can't emphasize this enough. If I'm a fraudster, I want to file taxes and try to get some fraudulent tax returns. I can't do it if you've already filed your taxes. It will be rejected. Again, be proactive, alert, and responsive. Do not be the victim. I want to just end it by showing you the resources that were used here. They can all be found on the Trust site. Again, trust.docusign.com. So if you want to look up any of this, all this information I gave you is available there again, trust.docusign.com. For more information, here's some contact information from DocuSign. You can call us at 877-720-2040. You can email us at webinar@docusign.com, or visit us at www.docusign.com. There is a link to the Trust site. You can find it at DocuSign.com, or just type in trust.docusign.com. Again, I want to thank everyone. I hope you can take away a lot of this information and protect yourselves, and really appreciate